When a Christian is ill, it is a great encouragement to remember that of the many friends of Christ over the centuries, those that we call the saints, there have shone a number of holy doctors. Today we're going to introduce the great and holy physician, Saint Pantaleimon. Saint Pantaleimon is one of the most beloved saints of the Orthodox Church, and you'll see icons of him in most Orthodox churches around the world. He's familiar to almost all of us, and he's easily recognizable. He has a young, clean-shaven face, he has curly hair, and he is dressed in the ancient robes of a physician. Like most doctor saints, he holds a small medicine chest. Normally in his right hand, he holds a spoon to deliver that medicine to the sick. This visual is also reminiscent of the great healing of soul and body that is found in Holy Communion, still delivered in the Orthodox Church with a similar kind of spoon. In his early life, he was known by another name, Pantaleon, which means in all things like a lion, and he is still known by this name in the Western world. He was from the city of Nicomedia, and his Christian mother had died when he was very young. His father, while not a hater of Christianity, was himself a pagan. Seeing his son's intelligence, Pantaleon's father invested in a strong education for the boy, an education in surgery. Pantaleon went to his studies with a keen and willing heart. He was fascinated by what he was learning. And on his way to his studies, some of the people he met were Christians, including a Christian priest. And this priest pointed out to him that while what he was learning was very good, it was still only temporary. His physical healing would work, yes, but then the person would get sick again. And had Pantaleon given any thought to the health of the soul? Now, Nicomedia was a very famous, very ancient, and very important city, and it had been, at some point, a strong bastion of Christianity. But that had ended only a couple of years before Pantaleimon's introduction to Christianity. There had been an event in this city that we've talked about in another episode when a pagan celebration of victory in Nicomedia had been avoided by the Christians. The Christians, as a result, had been massacred on Christmas Day. Thousands of Christians had died that day, and the violence covered the entire city for several weeks, with Christians being found in the royal houses, in the military, all of them being killed. And for a lot of Nicomedia, it seemed that Christianity was gone from the city forever. The entire population had been wiped out. Pantaleimon had met a small handful of the survivors of that original massacre. So that's something worth remembering. He is learning about Christianity from surviving Christians of an event that's just happened about 3 or 4 years ago. Pantaleimon would remember this. And yet he still goes to them and he still learns from them the truths of Christianity. And despite the risks, despite the dangers, he begins to see that this is the truth, that this is beauty. And he begins to believe in Jesus Christ and to ask those difficult questions. And while he's learning about Christianity, he continues with his studies and with his growing work as a doctor and a surgeon. There comes a day, however, when he is too late to save the life of a small boy who has been bitten by a snake. Pantaleon, as he is then called, comes to the side of the boy and is heartbroken and tries something he has never tried before. He calls upon the God of the Christians. He calls upon the Lord Jesus Christ to heal the boy. The boy wakes up. The boy is healthy. And Pantaleon raises him to his feet and says to himself in his heart, I need to get baptized. Pantaleon entered the Christian church. He was baptized and in honor of Christ took on a new name, a name of healing, a name that meant the all-merciful one. He became Pantaleimon. He began to expand his work. Apart from his profession of healing and looking after the rich nobles, he began to offer his medical services for free to anyone in the city who needed him. He would heal them, help them, pray for them, and teach them about Christ. Christianity was growing again in Nicomedia. On one occasion, he healed through his prayers, miraculously, a blind man. The blind man regained his sight, went away rejoicing, and one of the people there to witness Pantaleimon's healing him was Pantaleimon's father, who himself found Christ, was baptized, and entered into the religion of his wife and son. When Pantaleimon's father died, Pantaleimon inherited all of his property, which gave him even more ability to help the poor. He sold everything and used the funds to heal, to help, to grow. And this started bringing on the jealousy of the other surgeons and the doctors. They were in it for the glory and the power and the respect, and here was a man healing the beggars. And so they started to wonder how they could bring him down. And eventually they found their way. They reported him to the governor of the city. Pantaleimon is going to the prisons. He is giving medical attention to prisoners, including Christians. So they asked him, "Will you sacrifice to the pagan gods?" And Pantaleimon said, "No, of course not." So they dragged him before the courts, they dragged him before the torturers. He refused to recant his faith. He claimed openly that he was a Christian. At one occasion, he actually miraculously healed a sick man right in front of their eyes, and it did nothing to change their position. Christianity had to be eradicated again, and they began with Pantaleimon. Eventually, he was beheaded outside the city. But after Pantaleimon's death, the story of his strength and his courage actually inspired more people to join the faith, including some of the very soldiers that stood by him as he was executed. His story spread across the Christian world, eventually being told and recorded all the way from the Middle East to England. He became an inspiration to anyone that was ill, not just because they were looking for physical healing, but because they were looking for that medicine that Pantaleimon had to learn about, the medicine of the soul, that spiritual healing is more important than physical. It's one thing to be delivered from an illness, but to be strong through that illness, to hold onto hope and ultimately Christ is a greater miracle still, and it is for this that we most love our saintly physicians like Pantaleimon. Over the centuries, churches have been built in St. Panteleimon's name and towns and areas named after him around the Christian world. In many Orthodox prayers and services for healing, you will hear St. Panteleimon's name, amongst others, as being a holy physician, someone who understood that the truest and greatest medicine of all is Christ himself. St. Pantaleimon was a miracle worker, a doctor. He is someone whose example we should emulate as we pursue Christ. In a sermon on St. Panteleimon's day, St. John of Kronstadt said that following the example of St. Pantaleimon isn't just about being a miracle worker, it isn't just about being a doctor, but being kind, compassionate, merciful, patient, forgiving, non-vengeful, and sincerely loving is within our power and capability. Sincere love and genuinely good deeds are more important than miracles and are often more pleasing to God than many miracles. For the purpose and fulfillment of all the law is love, and he who loves his neighbor as himself has fulfilled the entire law. He himself is the true miracle. So that is the story of Pantaleimon, a very familiar face to Orthodox Christians. Look out for him next time you're in an Orthodox church. We thought we'd accompany this episode about a holy surgeon with some form of medicinal tea. So we have mountain tea, which is a herb known since ancient times of Hippocrates himself, as being a healing herb. And it's actually a really nice tea. A lot of medicinal teas taste kind of rough, but this one's warming and pleasant. I highly recommend mountain tea.